This is Ohio.
This is Ohio.
Jack, you wrote a book called This is Ohio, The Overdose Crisis and the Front Lines of a New America.
Right. It tells the story of grassroots organizers, ordinary people doing extraordinary, selfless work, promoting harm reduction and preventing overdose right here in Ohio.
So, why are we calling this podcast the same thing as your book?
Well, the title of the book came from my own exasperation with news stories written mostly for national audiences about the many people dying in Ohio of overdose. Stories that paint a picture of a place that was incapable of taking care of itself. The truth was, and I think is more complicated than that, there are people doing heroic things every day. We just don't often hear those stories. So I kept wanting to say, every time I read one of these stories, that's not Ohio. This is Ohio. So when we were coming up with a name for the podcast, a podcast about telling the stories of our quietly heroic neighbors, it just seemed to fit and to have the same ethos as the book.
So, tell me about Peggy Rutan.
Peggy was a volunteer at the Newark Homeless Outreach, a place that was central to the reporting that I did for my book. She was a real badass.
So, this is a story about Peggy and Kirby, and it's our bridge story from your book to our podcast.
Yeah. Peggy Rutan was one of a handful of volunteers who showed up every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon at an empty lot to provide food and other services to people without shelter. It was called the Newark Homeless Outreach. Slowly, she formed an uncommon and deep friendship with a weathered man who carried a walking stick. A man she thought was well into his 70s, but was really around 60. A man with kindness in his eyes, named Kirby.
We started off very slow in our interactions. I would just see him from afar and say hello. He was pretty quiet around me for a while. Then I remember one time it was pouring down raining. And mind you, with all of his scruff and everything, he looked much older than what he really is or was. So I always looked at him as, this poor old fella, unsheltered, dirty, quiet, the kindest eyes. So one day it was raining. We had our little canopy set up, and I had a folding bench. And I asked him if he wanted to come under the canopy and sit on the bench. And I spread out the bench for him. He went to sit down, or he sat down on it, and I didn't have the legs buckled all the way, and he went to the ground. So that was kind of the icebreaker for he and I.
Peggy felt a connection begin to grow with Kirby from that point. Then he didn't show up on Saturday for a few weeks. Peggy was looking for him on the streets throughout the week, and when he finally showed up again at the homeless outreach, she was overcome with relief.
Then he showed up at outreach, and I had a spatula in my hand, and I walked up to him and I cracked him with my spatula, and I said, "Don't ever do that again." I said, "You need to come and check in with us." So, and I started crying, and I'm like, "You need to check in with us." I'm like, we care, we're here, and I've been looking for you, and I haven't been able to find you. So from that point on, I pretty much always knew where his camp was. I would go visit him. I would take him water or anything else that he requested, that he thought he needed or said he needed. And we just built a friendship.
For the next year, Peggy regularly checked in on him at one of the informal camps for unhoused people set up around Newark, in woods, along the river, in secret spaces. She remembers one camp.
It was dirty. I mean, it was, but everybody had their own space. Everybody knew what was theirs. They had a makeshift portable shower sitting off to the side, like in a little wooded area. They had a little makeshift stove, like campsite where they would cook from. And it was, back in out of the way of things, but that site ended up getting bulldozed. And then he was under an underpass for a very long time, off of the bike path, and I would visit him there. And he just had a lawn chair, a broken down lawn chair up in the rocks, and a cooler, and that was it.
Peggy remembers the moment when she decided that Kirby was too old to be out on the streets. It was a frigid night, and she was giving him a ride to a warming shelter.
We were coming down 30th. There's a house on the left-hand side, or on the right-hand side, that had the brown bags full of leaves, sitting out to go to the dump to be picked up. And Kirby made the comment, you see all those leaves and that, that those bags of leaves? And I said, yeah. And he said, they're just going to go to the dump. And I said, yeah. And I said, that's why they're out there is, for them to be picked up. He said, that could help someone live. I said, what do you mean? And he said, you can use leaves to bring your body temperature up. He said, in weather like this, that's a means of survival. He said, it could keep somebody warm. And he said, and they're just going to go to the dump. And he was just so disgusted because the leaves were out to be picked up. And that was the day I knew he needs housing. He needs housing.
This began a journey to get Kirby housing, which took months. Peggy went with Kirby to appointments with housing authorities to look at an inadequate boarding house, guiding him as he wrestled with restrictions at another shelter. Finally, Peggy and another volunteer at the outreach paid their own money to put Kirby up at a hotel. 2 weeks into this arrangement, an apartment opened up at a local nonprofit called The Main Place. It was secure and clean, and a major breakthrough for Kirby.
So I made a Facebook post and I said, hey, I got Kirby housing. We need some help with furniture and things. So we got lots of donations, people with trucks offering to go pick stuff up. I took him to the store, let him pick out shower curtains and things of that nature. And
Peggy gestures to a trifold poster board that she brought with her. It's filled with pics of Kirby, including a photo of Kirby signing his lease and one of Kirby standing in the kitchen, his arms spread wide, his walking stick hanging from his left hand.
A lot of those pictures are the first day that when he signed his lease and when he first got his apartment, and he was just, take a picture of me here, take a picture of me there, and he was just so excited.
Why Kirby?
I don't know. And since his passing, I've been asked that by many people, and I don't know. I don't know. I think his age really got to me. And even though, he was younger, ended up being younger than I thought, it still just bothered me, that he was an older gentleman out living like that. And it just got to me. But as I became his friend, he was so intelligent. He just deserved so much better than that. And he just needed help. He just needed to know how to navigate the system. He needed to have someone come and hunt him down and find him and say, hey, we have an appointment. We got to go. Come on, get your stuff. Let's go. I used up all my vacation that year for his appointments and to get him moved in and to sign his lease and do all the things that were required of him. I don't know. I just wanted better for him. And he's an awesome person. I mean, he was just so smart, and he came from this wasn't always his life, and he just needed to get back on track a little bit. He just needed help.
From a certain perspective, a middle class perspective, this story is over, and it's a success. Peggy got Kirby moved inside, got him support services, got him on his feet again. But in another way, the story is just beginning.
I went on vacation, came back, and he had been out collecting items while I was gone. And it was horrible. There was like a 6-foot stuffed animal that had a hole in it, sitting on his furniture, that he had found in someone's trash. Guitars with no strings, anything.
Things that people had thrown away.
Yeah, things that people had thrown away. So then, it kind of dawned on me, he needs help. He still needs help. So we started going every Saturday, and we'd clean his apartment. And I would make him help. And he would always say, you're gonna make me domesticated yet, aren't you? Yes. Yes, I am. Yes, you will. You can go scrub your bathtub. You can go do this. You can change. He got a cat as an emotional support animal. I'm like, you can clean that litter box. You can do your dishes. So, but we used, and my grandson was with me. He would help. We would clean out his refrigerator because we got him signed up for Meals on Wheels. So he was getting meals delivered to him. He would still go down to the Salvation Army every day and get more food. And he would bring it home and he would shove it in his refrigerator. He was hoarding food. He would go to the main place and get food from there and shove it in his cupboards or his refrigerator. He was just hoarding. And, it was like, Kirby, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. You have food stamps. I was taking him to the grocery store every Saturday. Saturdays was our thing. I'd pick him up. We'd go to Outreach. He would get some food down there, eat, hang out with the people for a little bit, and then we would go clean his apartment. We would go to the grocery store. But, it wasn't just, you can't just put people that have been out in survival mode into, 4 walls and think that that's all that needs done, because it's not at all.
Kirby continued to have needs, but demands were falling upon Peggy in her own sphere. She had taken in a grandson. She had his games to attend, homework to supervise. There was also something hurtful that Kirby said, so gradually she pulled back from Kirby.
Honestly, I stepped back. I felt I had to. I called his sister and I said, I can't continue to do this. And then I just would see him out and about. I would always go see him on his birthday and Christmas. had just seen him before his passing on Christmas, before he passed.
Now, Peggy wishes that she hadn't pulled back. She wishes she had more resources, more time, more patience. Kirby died recently. This is how Peggy remembers it.
Alone? We don't know. His sister found him on his couch. She said it looked like he had just went to sleep. His cat was there, but he died alone.
There are admonitions to do good, to help others without reciprocation and without recognition, across history, across cultures. Like the story of the Good Samaritan, or the Buddhist proverb, abandon all hope of fruition. It means you do the work without needing the outcomes you might hope for, like success or public recognition. The thing is to do the work. Peggy knows that she helped Kirby. She brought water and ice to his camp. She drove him to appointments. She found him shelter and helped him maintain it. But she also gave him the rarest and most important gift of all. She saw him and came to understand who he was.
A lot of people gave him respect. And that's how you knew him, walking down the street, usually with a camouflage backpack, camouflage hat, camouflage pants, and his walking stick. That was Kirby.
Where was he headed?
Who knows? Maybe to the tracks to pick some berries. Maybe to his camp. Maybe to the Salvation Army. Just because that was his routine and his interaction with other people. His interaction with the ladies serving down there, and maybe somebody to listen to a story. Maybe just to the woods to sit by himself. He was always going somewhere.
Jack, if anyone would like to donate to or volunteer for the Newark Homeless Outreach, how could they do that?
Well, they can just drop by the corner of East Main and Buena Vista Street in Newark, Ohio, any Saturday between 10 and noon. They also have a website through Ohio Change Addiction Now, and you can reach them online that way. They're also on Facebook.
This episode of This Is Ohio was produced by Jack Schuler. That's you.
That's me. And Doug Swift. That's you. It was edited by you, Doug Swift.
That's true. Music for This Is Ohio was composed and performed by Matt Jackford.
This Is Ohio was made possible by a generous grant from the Denison University Research Foundation.
If you'd like to see a multimedia version of this story with pictures of Kirby and Peggy, including the ones mentioned in the story, you can find that
at The Reporting Project or at our website, thisisohiopodcast.org.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.
See us? They'll see us?
Well, I don't think they'll actually see us because this is a oral